353. Good morning. Let's all stand, please. Page 353. Page 353.
Welcome to Sunday school, our, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7th chance of being together this week already, and we still got one more to go. I really have enjoyed the revival, and it was good last night. I appreciate the message last night, and if you've left tonight and haven't got something, it's your fault, because he's brought food to the table every night, and it's been good to be here every night. I'm glad I'm a part of a people that has a desire to hear from the Lord. And I think Jessica or somebody was saying last night, if Preacher Rudy had it lined up, Jody said it, Lord had it lined up for Preacher to plan this meeting at this time during this election, knowing what we was going to be seeing. And a lot of the nights you can kind of see he's trying to tell you, get your mind off what's going on around you and get your mind on the Lord. So it's just good to be back in his house again. I'm glad to be here. Have any birthdays or wedding anniversaries at this time? Everybody, wow. If you would turn to Isaiah chapter 6, verse 1. Brother Landon posted something on Facebook yesterday morning, or sometime yesterday, and it got my mind to thinking about how much we need to see him and then get our mind off of what's going on around us. In this passage here, whether Isaiah had his mind more on Uzziah than he did on the Lord, I don't know. But I know when that king was gone, he saw the Lord like he'd never saw him before. And I ain't had my faith in Trump. I've had my eyes on him probably a little more than I should have, and probably had a little more hope in what I thought he was going to do and what I felt like he could do. Whether he did it or didn't, my eyes should have still been on the Lord. I should have had my hope and my desires. We talk about coming into service. Like, if you come through them doors, you need to have your mind on Jesus. Well, you should start planning when you get up that morning. You should have started planning the night before you went to bed. Lord, I want to wake up in the morning and I want to have you on my heart. I want to have your praises upon my lips. I want to have the desire to serve you and live for you. Not just when we come in church and say, all right, Lord, I'm here now. What can you do for me? We need to have our mind made up that we want to see him. No matter what's going on around us, like Mr. Moore said last night, there's a lot of things. We know God is bigger than anything in this world. He's got more power than anybody around, any other God. But yet we let little things, we let relationships, we let decisions about our future, little things come between us and the Lord. And we get caught up in it, and we focus on the little thing and not focus on how marvelous and how matchless and how powerful and how holy he is. But yet that's just how we are as humans. Isaiah chapter 6, verse 1 says, in the year that King Uzziah died, I saw also the Lord sitting upon a throne, high and lifted up, and his train filled the temple. And you read on down through there, and it tells about the angels was crying, holy, holy, holy. People, the angels are created beings. They're doing what they're supposed to do. But they didn't have somebody change their life. We've had somebody take us from a horrible pit, as David said, and set our feet upon a rock and establish our goings. And we get our mind caught up in the things of this world and get our eyes off him. How wonderful he is. He's, like Ricky said the other night, he's put us in the United States. He's put us in Pickens County, South Carolina. And everybody in this church has heard the gospel preached. And we get deadened to it. And we think, well, everybody out there's got what we got. Everybody out there's hearing the truth. Very few people out there are hearing the truth anymore, even in churches. Just like Landon said the other night. That church out there that's got all that ungodly stuff, thinking they're serving God, thinking they're doing what's right. But we know the truth. But what do we do with it? Are we being a witness? Are we trying to let our light shine? That's what this revival should be. It should be an awakening time for us to realize how little we're trusting in God, how little we're getting our eyes on him and off this world, and leave and saying, Lord, I don't know what the direction of my life needs to be, but I want it to be the direction you want it to go in. And I want to come into church every Sunday. I want to praise and worship you and love you like I've never loved you before. And whatever we've got in our life going on, it don't matter. He's really all that matters. The only thing we should be concerned with today, not what we're going to have for dinner, not what's going to happen tomorrow. Focus on him while we're here. The four walls of this church has got the world closed out. But our mind's still going to try to wander out there and get caught up in the things of the world. When all he's saying is, all you got to do is look at me. I'm everything that you need. I've got all power. I've got the answer to every decision that you'll ever have to make. If you'll only trust me, if you only look at me, if you'll only let the world, let me be bigger than the world, be bigger than whatever you're facing. I am bigger, but you've got to let me be bigger. It's a decision we all have to make, no matter what we're going through. He's bigger and greater than anything we'll see. If you'll stand, we'll be dismissed to Sunday school. Grant, dismiss to Sunday school, please.
Good morning. Good to see everybody in the Sunday school hour this morning. I appreciate everyone that's here. We've had a great week of revival. Appreciate every message that Brother Moore that God has given him this week. It's been a help, I think, to each and every one of us. I know it's been a help to me, and I appreciate how God's used him this week. Just right on time. Our time's not in God's time, but I know that God has everything lined up just like He wants it, and it just worked out that, and that God planned it this week when we needed it the most. And I'm glad that He has blessed us this week and helped us. I appreciate that, and appreciate the opportunity to teach this morning. Brother Keith asked me a couple of weeks ago if I would teach for him either this Sunday or 2 weeks from today, and I said, well, I'll just take the first Sunday. But I do appreciate the opportunity to teach. I don't take it lightly. I appreciate these men who faithfully stand and teach each and every Sunday, and how they put so much time into, their study and everything. And, we may think, well, they can just kind of get up there and, whatever. But it takes time to study, and it seems like things will come up or be, anything that'll come up and hinder you, whatever. But I'm glad to be able to study the Word of God. I appreciate the Word of God, the blessed old book that it is, and I appreciate it. Job chapter 2 through 31 is our lesson today. There's no possible way to try to cover that much scripture and or anything like that, so I'll just kind of hit a few highlights. And appreciate Brother Ray in chapter 1 last week, how the introduction to the book of Job, how Job is one of the oldest books in the Bible, if not the oldest. We took a little delay in between Genesis chapter, we went from 1 to 11, then went into Job, and then we'll start up with chapter 12 in a couple of weeks. But one of the oldest books in the Bible. But we see here that today's lesson deals with Job's friends, how they are to be comforters. But we'll see that Job, over in chapter 16, after all said and done, after they've come and tried to give him help and encouragement, and they just made him more miserable than he was. But the title of our lesson today is Miserable Comforters. We can see as believers, we're to comfort one another in difficult times. We're living in difficult times. We need to encourage one another as never before. We see that Job's friends, how they were to come to encourage and comfort him, but we're to be compassionate, sympathetic. That's what Job expected out of these friends, of his, but he needed them to build him up, to help him, encourage him, rather than to tear him down. And we live in a day and hour where just a few words can, tear somebody down. Words can hurt just as much, if not more, than if you hit them with your fist sometimes, or, beat them up or whatever. Words can hurt a lot more than that. You can ruin somebody's reputation with just words. We've seen it we've seen it all down through history, how just a few words can just, ruin somebody. They never able to, to get back to maybe the place they were at, but they were ruined because of words, deceitful words. But we see that Job was a very blessed man. We see he was blessed materially. He was a prosperous man, very wealthy. But not only that, I think the most important thing in Job's life, he had a godly influence over his family. We read about how that he went to the Lord in prayer for his family. He had 10 kids, 7 sons, 3 daughters. How that he was a spiritual man, wanted to make sure that his children were saved. He wanted to make sure his children were walking right each and every day. He went to the Lord for them. And as we live today, we see that us as parents, grandparents, that's what we need to do. Go to the Lord in prayer for our kids and grandkids as we see what's on the horizon. We see, I think, more now than ever, to pray for our kids and grandkids, the things that in schools that they go through, the things that I see on my job, things at schools, that some of the things they teach, some of the things that you see up and down the halls. We need to pray for them. They're a lot of kids now, it don't have to be the high school kids. Boy, they got some mouths on them that, you wouldn't have heard years ago, but now, just the kind of the day that we're living in. But we see here he was a great spiritual example, a godly character. He wanted his children to be right with God, but God had some choice words about him there. And in chapter 2 it said, "And again there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord. And Satan came also among them to present himself before the Lord. And the Lord said unto Satan, From whence cometh thou? And Satan answered the Lord and said, From going to and fro in the earth, and from walking up and down in it. And the Lord said unto Satan, Hast thou considered my servant Job, that there is none like him in the earth, a perfect and upright man, one that feareth God and escheweth evil, and still he holdeth fast his integrity, although thou movest me against him to destroy him without cause. And Satan answered the Lord and said, Skin for skin, yea, all that a man hath will he give for his life. But put forth thine hand now, and touch his bone and his flesh, and he will curse thee to thy face. And the Lord said unto Satan, Behold, he is in thine hand, but save his life. So went Satan forth from the presence of the Lord, and smote Job with sore balls from the sole of his foot unto his crown. And he took him a potsherd to scrape himself withal, and he sat down among the ashes. The one thing that stands out to me about Job here, what the Lord says about him. But he says to old Satan, Have you considered my servant Job? My servant Job. And he tells him, hey, he's a perfect man, a righteous man, upright. He fears God, escheweth evil. All these many things about him there. Have you considered him? We'll see that in chapter 1, we saw that all that Job had was taken away. His wealth, his children. But here yet it says he still holdeth fast his integrity. We see here that Satan tells God here, said, if you'll take everything that Job has, said he'll curse you to his face. He'll be a hypocrite. But the Lord said, hast thou considered my servant Job? And today, if that was to be said about us, have you considered my servant, Brother Keith, Brother Charles, Brother Scott, Brother Rudy? Have you considered my servant? He says he's my servant. Job had all this wealth, had everything, one of the richest men, if not the richest man on the earth in that day. Had everything. I mean, the cattle, the donkeys, everything that he needed, he had. 10 children. Can you imagine how, to be able to go sit down, and he had a close-knit family. Because I believe that it talks about them, and, they were together. Today a lot of families don't get together for, various reasons, but they were a close-knit family because Job prayed for them. He prayed that God would help them from day to day. But here we see that Satan's going to take advantage of the opportunity here that God permits him. God tells him you can touch him, but said there's a limit there. He said, even though he said that he will curse thee to thy face, but he said, behold, he is in thine hand, but save his life. He limits what he gives Satan the power to do what he does to him, but with a limit. But then we see that he went forth from the presence of the Lord, smote Job with balls from the top of his head to the sole of his foot. Can you imagine sore balls? Every once in a while we'll get a ball or I call them a bump or whatever. It gets so sore, so red so sore. But can you imagine from the top of your head to the sole of your foot? And then it says he took him a potsherd to scrape himself withal. Now here's a man who has lost, as the servants one by one came and told him what he had lost. And here we see that he, in a time of turmoil, time of, you wonder how, Job, God's servant, how that God would, let Satan touch him like that. But he knew what Job was. He knew what kind of man Job was. He knew that even though he go through all these troubles and trials and temptations, at the end of Job's life, he was blessed twice as much as he was before. And Job knew that God would be with him no matter what. But here we see, said he took him a potsherd to scrape himself withal, and he sat down among the ashes. A potsherd. Even though you would think, well, if you have these balls as the kind of shape that Job was in, he took a potsherd, which was a piece of a pottery, a broken piece of a pottery or a big pot. And instead of putting salve or ointment on these balls, as would have been customary in those days to help them heal, he takes a potsherd, a piece of pottery, a pot, and scrapes them. He's in such trouble and such turmoil. His heart's broke for his family, that he's lost everything. Not so much that he's lost his material wealth, but he's lost his family. Just think about it, to lose a child. And some in here has lost children. Just to lose but to think that you lose 10 children at one time, it just, beyond my belief, to think about that. But here we see that through all this, we'll see that Job, in verse 22 of chapter 1, and all this Job sinned not, nor charged God foolishly. He said he worshiped. You say, how could a man who's lost all this? But what God said about him, said he feared God, escheweth evil. He was going to worship the Lord no matter what. Now here it says he scraped all these boils, all this dead skin and putrefying sores off of him there, and sat down among the ashes. In those days, they would rent their mantles, they would shave their head, they would sit down among ashes in a time of trouble, of mourning there. But we see here that Satan is walking about whom he may devour. And that's what Satan was doing at this time, walking about seeking whom he may devour. And in this day and hour that we're living in, he's ramped up his efforts against the church, against the family, against whatever that stands for God. The devil's going to accuse people. But here he accuses Job. He says he'll be selfish. He's lost all this stuff, said, now, since the Lord's blessed him with all this, said, since he's lost it, said he's going to just be selfish, only care for himself, said he'll curse you to your face. That's what Satan does to Job here. But then in verse 9, it says, then said his wife unto him, dost thou still retain thine integrity? Curse God and die. We see Job with a disease that's very grievous, that during this time he's lost everything. One of the choicest saints, I think. But here, Job humbles himself under the mighty hand of God. We see here that even his wife is brought to be a troubler to him during this time. Was it not enough that he had lost everything? But before we get, so much on Job's wife, and she does catch a lot of flack, I guess you could say. But you think about this. Job's wife lost just as much as Job did. Maybe not so much materially, but you think about children. And there's something about a mother's nurturing care about her children. If your kids get hurt, your children get hurt, They might come to Daddy and say, I got hurt, but who do they go to for that loving, that nurturing, that care, that caressing? They go to their mother. That's why it's always been at my house, even now. It's Rebecca and Brent, they'll call and they'll talk to me a minute, and they say, well, what's Mama doing? So I want to talk to Mama. You know, that's the way it is. Kids have a special bond with their mom, their mother. And you think about her, even though Job has got all this going on, these sore balls and everything, but you think about her heart. Her heart's broke too here. But maybe she's lost a little confidence in God because of everything that's lost. This was her kid. She bore these kids. These were her kids here too. But we see here that, his wife going through the same sorrow. But she said, dost thou still retain thy integrity? Curse God and die. Well, she probably to see Job in this condition, the condition he was, she might have thought, well, he's going to die anyway, just with all these boils from head to toe. Probably unrecognizable, as we'll see his friends come on the horizon. They see that he's unrecognizable there. But we see here that there could have been an uprising of corruption, of hatred, of, defiance against God for losing all this stuff. But we see the grace of God in Job's life here. It held the upper hand in Job's life. But we see here, Job says, but he said unto her, thou speakest as one of the foolish women speaketh. What? Shall we receive good at the hand of God, and shall we not receive evil? And all this, Job did not sin with his lips. Boy, it's been hard to, just to sit there and take it from, everything that's happened. And then your wife even kind of turn against you here. But we see here that in verse 11, we see now when Job's 3 friends heard of all this evil that was come upon him, they came every one from his own place. Eliphaz the Temanite, Bildad the Shuhite, Zophar the Naamanite. For they had made an appointment together to come to mourn with him and to comfort him. The news gets out that the man Job, who was the wealthiest man in that day, had everything, seemed like. All this has come crumbling down. Everything that Job has is gone. They hear, the news comes to them, and his friends, they counsel together. They come together from different places. They say, let's go see Job. Let's go see if we can give him some words of wisdom. Let's go see if we can help him out, give him some advice, of what's going on. And so they come together, and when they lifted up their eyes afar off and knew him not, they lifted up their voice and wept, and they rent everyone his mantle and sprinkled dust upon their heads toward heaven. We can see here that Job is sitting in misery amongst the ash heap there. He's sitting there. They see him, but they don't recognize him. An awful sight, I guess you could say, that as they see Job here, we see that they were going to come together for a purpose. We're going to go see why all this evil has come against our friend Job. But they do not know that God had a plan for Job's life, that God had allowed this to happen. We'll see that, but I don't think they had ever experienced what Job was going through. They come together. Let's go understand. Let's talk to him. Let's see what's going on in his life. Why would this happen to a great man like him? As they said, they came to comfort him. To comfort means to relieve, to console in times of distress. And, in times of trouble, we need some comforting. Times of, some relief, some consolation. But we see here that his friends lift up their voice and weep. And then they rent their mantles, the ashes over their head, and they sat down with him here. So they sat down in verse 13 with him upon the ground 7 days and 7 nights. And none spake a word unto him, for they saw that his grief was very great. Can you imagine coming finally when they come up and they see this man who, like they've never seen anybody before, troubled, just tore out of the frame, just can't say anything. He's mourning, he's weeping. And here they see him, he's unrecognizable. They said, well, maybe that is Job. Let's go on down there and see. And when they were able to see through all this that it was him, what they do? They sat down with him on the ground, and they didn't speak a word. Can you imagine sitting down with somebody for 7 days and 7 nights and never saying a word? That's almost impossible. But you think, and they'll say plenty later on, but now they are mourning with him. Here's their friend that they have heard that all this evil has come upon him there. But we see here that they sat down with him because his grief was very great. Can you imagine all that Job has went through? I can't even imagine what, to even think about what he's lost and all this here. But then in chapter 3, after this, opened Job his mouth and cursed his day. And Job spake and said, let the day perish wherein I was born, and the night in which it was said, there is a man-child conceived. Let that day be darkness. Let not God regard it from above, neither let the light shine upon it. We can see here that we see Job's complaint. We see Job's despair here. It says he cursed his day. Finally, after 7 days and 7 nights of total silence, Job finally speaks here. We can see here that he wished he had never been born. Can you imagine someone saying that I wished I'd never been born? He goes on down, verse 11, I believe it is. Why died I not from the womb? Why did I not give up the ghost when I came out of the belly? Here's a man wishing that he could just die, wishing he had never been born to start with. But now I think he wishes he could die here. But we see here that I think as he goes on down in I believe verse 23 through the end of the chapter, it says, why is light given to a man whose way is hid, and whom God hath hedged in? For my sighing cometh before I eat, and my roarings are poured out like the waters. For the thing which I greatly feared is come upon me, and that which I was afraid of is come unto me. I was not in safety, neither had I rest, neither was I quiet, yet trouble came. Job finally acknowledges that he thinks that God has allowed this in his life. We see that he's finally comes to the realization that God is allowing his afflictions here. And then as we get on down into chapter 4, we start to see his friends for the next few chapters. They begin to question Job. They begin to say, all right, Job, let's go over what all's happened. Let's question you. They ask him questions. They, maybe they'd been better off if they'd have stayed in silence like they were before. But we see that Job's in a bad shape, bad condition right here. But we see here Eliphaz's complaint against Job. Then Eliphaz the Temanite answered and said, if we assay, and assay here means to test, to try, to prove, to commune with thee, wilt thou be grieved? If we ask you questions, are you going to be grieved? Are you going to turn against us? Are you going to, not give us any answers to what's going on here? But who can withhold himself from speaking? Behold, thou hast instructed many, thou hast strengthened the weak hands, thy words have upholden him that was falling, and thou hast strengthened the feeble knees. But here's the word but. but now it is come upon thee. Here he gives Job some encouraging words here of, Job, you've always been one to reach out and to help people that are in need. I can know that he could say, what you did for your family, what you've done for your friends. He begins to ask him questions. You've helped these people. You've strengthened the weak knees. You've held up hands of those who were in need. But he says, but now it has come upon thee. What are you going to do now, Job? Are you just going to, and he said, thou faintest. It toucheth thee, and thou art troubled. Here's Job needed comfort. He didn't need words that, he needed love and understanding. But now, Job's three friends, they're going to ask him question after question, going to, have doubts towards Job. Why are you going through this, Job? There's got to be something in your life, Job, for all these things that happen. And we'll see that in the next chapters there, but in a way, maybe the questions they asked Job, the accusations against him, they were not all wrong about, they're going to say, you're going to reap what you sow, Job. And that's more or less what they're going to say to him here. But he said, but now it's come upon thee. We see that Job being one who had instructed, who disciplined, who corrected, one that encouraged him, been an encourager, had a righteous character. But we see here that he was able to help others emotionally. He was able to help them mentally and spiritually. Not only that, he could help them physically because of what he had. But here, he needed this now, but it's not coming from his friends here. We see here that Eliphaz says now that Job's not willing to listen to his own counsel. He said, now it's come upon you. What are you going to do with it? And I look at us sometimes, things come our way, and how do we handle the situation? How, the next few years, how are we going to handle the situation, whether the country is and all that? How are we going to do that? But we see Job. How are you going to handle this, Job? I think that Satan had undertook to prove Job a hypocrite. I think that was Job's main thing, was saying, God, if you'll take everything from him, he'll curse you to his face. He'll be a hypocrite. And I believe that's what, Eliphaz is saying here. He's saying, he concludes him to be one because he is so afflicted. But then he accuses Job of being impatient. Now, here Job had been one who feared God, eschewed evil, done all, a spiritual man, godly man, righteous man. But he's saying here, now all this has come, so what you going to do now? All this has come upon thee. But we see, what would we do if we was in Job's shoes? How would we react? How would we do? How would we treat our friends who come and start asking us, well, you got something going on in your life. Just, go ahead and tell us what it is. But here in the next few verses, he says, is not this thy fear, thy confidence, thy hope, and the uprightness of thy ways? Remember, I pray thee, whoever perished, being innocent, or where were the righteous cut off? Even as I have seen, they that plow iniquity and sow wickedness reap the same. By the blast of God they perish, and by the breath of his nostrils are they consumed. The roaring of the lion and the voice of the fierce lion and the teeth of the young lions are broken. He's saying, Job, you got something in your life. Said you're reaping what you sow. We see here that he said those who perish are not innocent. People's going to reap what they sow. We see here that he's saying, Job, everything that you're going through is because of your own sin here. And we're quick. I mean, just as, we live in this flesh, we're a lot of times quick to jump to the conclusion that something bad is going on in somebody's life because they have sin in their life. We see here a lot of times it'd be better for us to keep our mouth shut because we don't know what that person is going through. And these friends of Job, they didn't know exactly what he's going through. They knew everything he had lost, but they didn't know that, that God had allowed Satan to touch him with these boils and all this was going on there. But we see here, a lot of times it's not because there's sin in our life. It's because God puts us through troubles and trials to test us. And this was a great test in Job's life, a great man as he was, a test in his life. But we see here as we skip on over to chapter 6, we see that, but Job answered and said, "Oh, that my grief were thoroughly weighed, and my calamity laid in the balances together. For now it would be heavier than the sand of the sea. Therefore my words are swallowed up. For the arrows of the Almighty are within me, the poison whereof drinketh up my spirit. The terrors of God do set themselves in array against me." Job seeing what's going on in his life right now, he knew that God had set these things against him here. But we see here that, what he's going through allowed him the right to complain or to suffer, I guess you could say. But we see here that it goes on in chapter 16. It says, I think in verse 1 and 2, he said, "Then Job answered and said, I have heard many such things. Miserable comforters are ye all." And I've just kind of went over what Eliphaz, had to say. Bildad, Zophar, they had words, some of the same things, accusing him of reaping what he had sowed. But we see, he said, "Miserable comforters are y'all." These were supposed to be his closest friends. They're the ones that would be there when none else would, even when his wife had seemingly turned against him there. But we see that these three men, they didn't try to understand this suffering from Job's point of view, only from their own point of view. And how many times do we look at others from maybe our point of view and say, well, that we try to judge them? And that's exactly what Job's friends are doing here. They being judgmental. They're judging him for what he's going through. And we have this old flesh. We're prone to do the same thing. We're judgmental a lot of times. And times when we'd say, instead of praying for them, trying to comfort them, give them words of wisdom, we want to criticize and we want to break them down there. But I've heard Brother Rudy say it many times. God's army is the only one that buries their hurt, they're afflicted. We're prone to bury them when they're down and out. And that's just the way we are. But we see here that they had come to be comforters, but only added to his misery. Job knew without a doubt. He said, "I'm not giving up on God." He said, "I know God has, allowed this to happen in my life." He said, "I'm not going to curse God and die." He said, "I know that I'll be blessed of God. God will not put on us more than we can stand." But then let's see if I can find it here. But like I say, God will not put more on us than we can stand. I'm glad that he don't. We see a lot of people going through a lot of things right now. We see this COVID, and all the, thing that's with it, all the other cancer. We see it rampant throughout our land. But God's not going to put more on us than we can stand. But in chapter 19, verse 25, it says, "For I know that my Redeemer liveth, and that he shall stand at the latter day upon the earth. And though after my skin worms destroy this body, yet in my flesh shall I see God." Job said, no matter what's happened to me, what's going to happen to me, he said, I'm going to stay with the stuff. His brother Moore preached last night. Keep on keeping on. Stay with the stuff. That's left my pea patch for the last time. Job was a mighty man. He's brought down to a, just nobody can recognize him. All this going on, all these things, afflictions, sicknesses, all these things come against him. But we can see that Job, at the end of the book of Job, he's blessed twice as much as he was before. God had a plan for his life, and this ought to be a plan that Job's friends could see that, he's a man who stood the test down through the years. He's going to keep on standing. He's going to keep on for the Lord. Even though that he had everything taken away, he's going to be blessed twice as much in the end. I hope you got something out of the lesson today. I appreciate your attention. Thank you